Oh boy. So, this actually makes a lot of sense. You know, we've been talking all this talk about the Montreal Canadiens, and their hockey team has not really been all too great the past few weeks here, and it's really resulted in some poor engagement in the product. A lot of Habs fans are losing interest. These videos are getting less views than they had in the past, and it's not necessarily because it's like, oh, you know, like, the topics are bad. Lego, it's your fault. It's just really, there's nothing else to talk about. Like, what, you want to do an entire 20-minute deep dive into Ivan Demidov footage? I can't do that. It's copyrighted material. So this is actually one of the topics that I think we can dive into that inspires hope. It goes over some potential new Montreal Canadiens trade targets that actually do make a lot of sense as written and published by the folks on TVA Sports. So, as always, this show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there and check out the first link in the description to save some money on your VPN, get some free months, and support this YouTube channel in the process. I wanted to leave a link in the description to an article published by Nick Kluche. Should the Montreal Canadiens target these two friends of Ivan Demidov at the trade deadline? Will the Montreal Canadiens use their unrestricted free agents to acquire the rights to a friend of Ivan Demidov in order to prepare for the arrival of their jewel in North America? It's a tentative proposition that GM Kent Hughes might want to consider as the trade deadline approaches. Now, the article does a really interesting thing, and it uses an example from about 10 years ago when Artemi Panarin set his sights on the Blackhawks in 2015. At that time, his agent, Thomas Lind, set one condition, that Artemi come in a two-pack with partner Viktor Tikhonov. Tikhonov also got acquired by Chicago, and he didn't really do anything in that team, but his role was to facilitate the integration of a talented player whose English was broken. Viktor Tikhonov, by the way, the grandson of the legendary Soviet head coach of the national team, Viktor Tikhonov. Yeah, that's right, he was named after his grandfather, but aside from that little piece of trivia knowledge, there are two teammates of Demidov's who catch their eyes at TVA Sports on SKA St. Petersburg. They are center Zakhar Bardakov and winger Arseni Gritsyuk, who will theoretically have fulfilled their contracts in Russia at the end of the season. Bardakov, a left-handed shot, is owned by the Colorado Avalanche. Gritsyuk, also a left-handed shot, is owned by the New Jersey Devils. Both teams will be in the buyer's camp at the trade deadline. The article says here that the Devils have reportedly shown interest in Canadian center Jake Evans, and the Avalanche seem more or less satisfied with Casey Mittelstad's performance at second-line center. Additionally, the Habs will need an injection of depth up front if they do indeed lose Evans, Armia, or Dvorak. So, let's dive into each of these two guys and debate whether or not it's worth it for the Montreal Canadiens to target these guys in a trade in order to facilitate a smoother and more seamless transition for Ivan Demidov. Arseni Gritsyuk has been fantastic with the KHL team this year. 23 years old, a young dude, a fifth-round pick by the Devils back in 2019. He's got 37 points in 44 games played this year with SKA. He's been relatively consistent throughout the year. There was a lull in November where the team was losing and Gritsyuk wasn't getting any points, but aside from that, at the beginning of the season and recently, he has been doing very well. Arseni Gritsyuk is more of a speedier, meatier forward with a pretty good playmaking edge. He, like Demidov, has been varying in ice time through most of the season. He's got some 13-minute games, he's got some 20-minute games. It's been up and down everywhere for these SKA forwards with head coach Roman Rottenberg. Meanwhile, if you look at the other guys, Zakhar Bardakov is an Avalanche prospect that is in a similar age range. Gritsyuk's 23, so is Bardakov. These guys are both turning 24 soon. Bardakov this season has 35 points in 49 games played, but he was not really as productive with SKA the prior few years. Gritsyuk was a lot more productive in the past few years, so I guess if you wanted to put value where the points are, Gritsyuk might be the guy, plus he's got a little bit more draft capital. But if you scroll down into this article, this is what the TVA folks write about. We asked well-connected Igor Aranko, the Russian equivalent of Bob McKenzie, former San Jose Sharks scout and former KHL executive, for his opinion. Which of the two players should the Canadiens target? As for Bardakov, he is rather cautious. You can count on this big guy to position himself in front of the net and win his battles in the corners of the rink, but he is said to be rather limited offensively. His NHL potential is very questionable, Arango said in the text message. He would become a third-line player in the best-case scenario. He believes, Igor Arango does, that the Canadiens should target Gritsyuk more, provided the Devils are willing to part with him. He is described as a very fast skater who can handle the puck in tight spaces. He should finish his contract with SKA this summer, but it's not certain yet, Arango said, knowing that one should always be wary of KHL Russian contract extensions. There are currently no Russians on the Canadiens roster and none of note in the prospect pool. Alexander Gordin and Makar Kainen's chances of reaching the NHL are negligible. Yeah, you could say that again. That's not really all too likely, I would say, in terms of them finding NHL hopefuls. This summer, Russians Ivan Provorov, Dmitry Orlov, Evgeny Dadonov, Vladislav Gavrikov, and Vladislav Nemesnikov will be UFAs, but for all sorts of reasons, they will be more or less attractive to the Montreal Canadiens. So, if we think about Arseni Gritsyuk, for example, as a main piece for a Montreal Canadiens trade, I'm not saying like, oh, Jake Evans 1-for-1 for Gritsyuk gets it done. Obviously, that's not really equal value there. You're not trading away a legitimate rental for what is essentially a third-round prospect, even though there is value as to why Montreal would target a guy like Gritsyuk. You can say that there is more value for Gritsyuk in this organization in Montreal than there is maybe in any other organization in the league. It's a similar thing to Philadelphia, you know? Andrei Kuzmenko. He wasn't really an attractive option to most NHL teams, but he was to Philadelphia because he can help with that Matvei Mishkov translation factor with John Tortorella. Similar thing here with Gritsyuk. Now, does that bring his value up to match that of a Jake Evans? Probably not. I'd say if Kent Hughes was expecting a first-round pick for Jake Evans, if you get Gritsyuk instead, it's probably Gritsyuk and maybe like a third or a fourth that gets it done, rather than just a first. And I get it, you could also debate whether or not Gritsyuk has NHL potential and if him and a third is all too matching of a first-round pick caliber asset. But you gotta remember, you know, there's more value here for Montreal with Gritsyuk than there is with any other team. New Jersey doesn't have another player in SKA St. Petersburg that is gonna need that translation factor, that is gonna have to come over to Montreal and is gonna have to be subjected to all this pressure. Chicago did it with Tikhonov and Artemi Panarin, and that was fine. It worked out because Tikhonov wasn't really fantastic, but he helped Panarin transition. Ivan Demidov may or may not be in a spot where that kind of thing is also valuable. Who really knows? So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you think that New Jersey Devils prospect Arseni Gritsyuk or Colorado Avalanche prospect Zakhar Bardakov should be targets for the Montreal Canadiens heading into this 2025 trade deadline? If you think one of these guys would come over to Montreal and be their best selves, then okay, that's one thing. But do you also think there's value in allowing them to be present when Ivan Demidov makes his transition? That's another thing. What are your thoughts on these prospects as a whole? If you're a fan of SKA St. Petersburg, I know a lot of Habs fans have been watching the team just for Demidov, but what have you been seeing out of Zakhar Bardakov, the big dude with the net front presence potential, and Arseni Gritsyuk, the speedy playmaking winger? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about these two prospects and whether or not the Habs should go after them. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.